Today I logged on to twitter.com to see something I'm pretty used to seeing. A couple of the Twitter accounts I follow making fun of Contrapoints' new video titled Envy for containing opinions that were too liberal. So I watched the video Envy, and honestly the viewpoints that Contrapoints was making in the video about the concept of envy and how that applies to like our general culture and the online left were so true that they were almost banal. At best, however, these words were so true that they needed to be said, and I'm kind of leaning towards they needed to be said, if you know what I mean. Please go to Contrapoints' channel to watch the video to see the context of this, because I have no intention of accurately summarizing her video here. This video is just going to be me kind of going off in a very haphazard and off-the-cuff sort of way, kind of like a personal response to the content of her video. I don't really like putting effort into things that I don't get paid to do. That's because the Thunderdome that is capitalism makes it very difficult for me to enjoy said things, given how little time I have to enjoy them. So, it is what it is. Anyway, I am filming this video because envy is a feeling that I have personally grappled with. In fact, it was one of the barriers to me getting politically involved in the first place. I think this might be true for other people on the left, too. I think Contrapoints is right about leftists being people who struggle with overcoming personal envy. They let that anger consume them instead of learning how to weaponize it and turn it outward into political actions that actually help the people they claim to be interested in helping. Instead, they end up prioritizing this feeling of animosity towards people with privilege that they can never have. And instead of analyzing that feeling, they get eaten alive by it. That's the black hole that all your energy gets sucked down when you experience this kind of envy. In fact, from what I've heard, this is very much what is going on in the DSA today, both nationally and sometimes on a local scale. However, Contrapoints makes it a point in her video to note that envy is not like this thing that needs to be eradicated. It's part of the human condition. She doesn't want to get rid of it. The point is to not let envy rule you. I have been ruled by envy. Let me explain it in the broadest terms possible, okay? My life is fucking absurd. Like, if I were to sit here and describe to you the nonsensical crap that I've lived through, we would be sitting here for hours and it would be extremely uncomfortable because you didn't ask for that. Like, for the sake of making us both comfortable with this conversation we're having, let's just say I joined a circus. No. I was coerced into joining the circus, and the circus was fucked up. Okay? It was a coercive, fucked up circus. Just keep that image of me joining the circus in your mind, just to contemplate how fucked up my life was. Like, just how absurd, just silly. It's a very silly experience. That's the amount of absurdity we're talking about here. So, it is safe to say that for most of the time that I've been alive, I have not lived a normal life. When I watch a TV and it's a sitcom, or like a slice of life kind of thing with a family, there's no sense of relatability for me there. Or even when the family is purposefully dysfunctional and clearly not the ideal, there's this overwhelming sense of family between those people that I just have never experienced. In fact, I used to not be able to watch shows including families because I would find myself overwhelmed by the unbearable envy I experienced. Because I would find myself overwhelmed by unbearable envy at the sight of something that I could never have, that I didn't have. Like, I quite literally would have to turn away from the screen. Same thing with books. I couldn't read books where main characters had relationships with their family members. It was even worse seeing those images of family in real life. You can't escape the concept of family in American culture, even when you close the books and go outside. It's on billboards and commercials. It's at the grocery store when you see single moms working hard to rein in their cute little kids. Single moms, by the way, count as family and are almost just as revered in American culture as the nuclear family. It's on airplanes when grandma reaches over to trade her snack with her granddaughter. It's at your best friend's house. It's at your significant other's house. It's just not at your house. There is no cohesive pull between the people you live with. They don't know how old you are, and they don't know when your birthday is. Sometimes you get the sense that you could accidentally die alone in your room, and no one would find the body for a while because that's just how little anybody ever checks it up on you. And you're thinking all this as a kid, right? Like, it shapes your world. It invades every relationship you have or could have. It destroys everything because first, it destroys you. Envy prevented me from forming healthy relationships. I always chose the toxic people over the healthy ones because, for me, the toxic people were more relatable. And when I was around the toxic people, I wouldn't have to be consumed by that feeling of rage and overwhelming self-pity, the trademarks of envy, and, of course, the shame that comes with feeling those things for another person who doesn't really deserve to be the target of such feelings. I was so stuck in this place of just constantly running away from that feeling, not being willing to address it, that I self-isolated. I was developing ideas about who I was politically and how I felt about the world, and concepts like housing for all, Medicare for all, and education for all. But I could never reach out to any potential comrades about these concepts because, if you haven't noticed, having a family is a pretty normal thing in our culture, and most of the comrades I've run into at least have some story of their family experience that makes sense. The story of my family doesn't make any sense. That's why, among other reasons, I've chosen to describe it as a circus. Because when you're not part of the circus but you're in the circus, it's just chaos. It was chaos. It was like falling forever with no one there to catch you. It was like realizing that every single person you go to school with has a network of soft beds under the tightrope they walk on. An entire structure of people and systems designed to catch them when they fall. It's a lot more scary to walk that tightrope when there's not even a single bed to catch you. And I was scared. One thing that is lucky about the way I was raised is that you start to see things like that. You start to see the invisible systems that exist to catch certain people when they fall, and the same systems let other people fall through the cracks. I started to notice how families were like systems, and how if you don't have a family, you're basically fucked, because in America, family is considered the main social support system. That's where all your social support needs come from, or that's where they're supposed to come from. So if you don't have anyone to help you with your homework, or get you to school on time, or get your clothes to fit you properly, like take you shopping, or help you make your lunch so you don't go hungry, you're fucked. Because there's no functioning system in this country that will replace your family for you if your family fails to do its assigned social task. Our country basically says to people like me, you're on your own. I basically raised myself. I mean that literally, not figuratively. I legit learned how to take care of myself on my own. I'm not saying that to be prideful, I'm just saying it because it's the truth. And I have a control for that. An example of what could have happened to me if I had, I don't know, if something else had been different. And, that's my brother. My brother did not get out. Anyway, back to what I was saying before. I started to notice these systems, right? These things about systems. But I'm basically stuck with this realization about systems on my own because I can't talk to people. I can't get out of the envy headspace long enough to realize that it's more than just the people with families versus people without families problem. It goes deeper than that. There is a massive structural divide in our country, and it is all tied up in race, class, gender, sexuality, and it goes on and on. It permeates everything. And in order to get to the point where I could even find people to talk about this with, I had to cross the barrier of judging people for simply coming from privilege. I needed to learn to stop holding that privilege against them from right off the bat before they even said a word. Because here's something I learned. People with families generally don't know that I don't have a family. The amount of times I got asked in school something along the lines of, what is your family doing over Thanksgiving? Or something like that, when I had spent Thanksgiving with my family. The last time that happened was 10 plus years ago before that. So it was heartbreaking and unbearable to hear that question, But I guess you just get used to not being able to bear it after a while. More importantly than that, though, I decided that joining up with other working class people to try and get something done was more important to me than the little pity party I have in my head every time someone tries to talk to me about Thanksgiving. I mean, fuck Thanksgiving anyway. Why the fuck is a person who looks like me crying about Thanksgiving? It's kind of like, did I forget about what Thanksgiving represents to certain groups of people? I guess, for a minute there I did. Anyway, envy isn't necessarily something that is logical, and that's okay. I acknowledge that this envy doesn't really come from a healthy place. And envy is still something I struggle with. But these days, I've learned to dig a little deeper and just try to accept the fact that it's here. It's this feeling I have, and underneath the surface, this feeling of envy isn't really anger or rage or resentment at all. It's grief. I'm grieving the death of a dream. So when people criticize Contrapoints for the way she dresses all feminine and has this gold-trimmed, aristocratic themed aesthetic, I just have to roll my fucking eyes, because you can go buy gold-colored earrings at the Dollar Tree and you will look glamorous on your iPhone when you film something. But that doesn't make you an aristocrat. And even if she was an actual fucking aristocrat, are we still not allowed to like or appreciate her? Why? because her life is a little different than ours is. She doesn't seem that out of touch to me, and that's this criticism I hear a lot. She's so out of touch. She doesn't really get it. She doesn't know what it's like for the rest of us. And this is coming from someone who feels like an alien most of the time. Like, I'm pretty alienated from the normal experience. So, when I say she doesn't seem that out of touch, I mean, she seems more similar to you than y'all seem to me. Just saying. The truth is that Contrapoints, though I have my own gripes with her, is not my enemy. And neither are the dweebs on Twitter who complain that she's out of touch. My enemies are the structural systems that produce inequality between us. My enemies are the thing that made me go hungry at lunchtime when I was in high school while kids who had families got to eat. I'm so tired of all this crap on Twitter and YouTube where leftists whine instead of do. We should be using these spaces for something better than this. Someone a hell of a lot smarter than me is going to have to figure out a way to make that happen. Because I have just barely figured out how to survive capitalism without becoming homeless. So I kind of have my hands full right now. Anyway, I hope everyone has a great night.